Hey there, so this is part 2 of the explanation about calories and understanding how we calculate your caloric needs and how we personalize this program to you. So it's something that adjusts to your specific lifestyle and your actual metabolism. In part 1, we learned that there's different concepts and different components that make up total caloric expenditure, which is essentially the amount of energy your body needs. I want you to remember one thing. Your body is like a car. It needs a specific amount of fuel, but in this case, different kinds of macronutrients, and we'll talk about that later on, to be able to thrive, to be able to move and do all these different things. But here's the thing. Unlike a car, your body is really good at adapting to the circumstances that is being put on, but still requires fuel. So from today, I want you to start changing the way you start seeing nutrition from the perspective of scarcity. The less you eat, the more you're going to lose, from a perspective of fuel, food as fuel. This is exactly what is helping you not only move, perform better, like be more efficient with your body. Now, there's always a goal, and that's the reason why you and I decided to work together, or we'll be working together in the future, hopefully. And usually that is because you're trying to accomplish an aesthetic goal, you want to feel better, you want to have increased energy, you want to increase muscle mass. Depending on what that goal is going to be, it's usually going to fall under either weight loss or weight gain. I like to usually call them fat loss because I prefer not to lose just weight, I prefer to lose fat, and muscle gain or increased amount of lean mass in your body, because we don't want to gain fat mass, right? So most of you are usually going to fall on one side or the other, unless you're an athlete in which you're just trying to improve. You're kind of like right in the middle. You just want to stay where you're at. You just want to improve the weight that your body performs, and that's totally okay. Now, theoretically speaking, when we looked at part 1 on the entire calories, the amount of calories your body needs, we talked about the fact that your body needs a specific number to be able, theoretically speaking, again, and I'm going to explain why I'm talking about in theory here and not necessarily the application part. But essentially, we talked that 2,100 calories for that example, that specific woman or somebody about my size needed about this amount of calories to be able to just stay what they were at. Not weight coming up, not weight coming down. It's essentially what your body needed to thrive according to your specific amount of energy that your body was using on that specific day. Now, theoretically speaking, again, if we would create a caloric deficit, which is essentially reducing the amount of calories below 2,100, technically we should be able to see weight loss. We should be able to see your weight dropping. Now, if we wanted to instead increase the amount of muscle and weight in our body, there's a lot of things that come along with that, but theoretically speaking, once again, we should be consuming more than 2,100 calories. This is what science shows. But there are other things that come into play that would explain that sometimes a calorie is not just a calorie. Number 1, we had to look at your macronutrient distribution. And if you and I are working together at this point, you realize that I gave you specific nutrition profiles for different days and depending on what you're doing on those specific days. So for example, some people get active days and rest days. Sometimes there are refeeds, and we will learn throughout this process, if we haven't yet, on how to manipulate a lot of those different numbers to be able to really adapt your metabolism and personalize your program according to you and what you do on a daily basis. Now, we always look at those macronutrients because they represent exactly what the calories are going to be. So I'm actually going to grab my marker here and going to explain a couple different things to you. So where do calories come from? Proteins are caloric sources, the same thing as carbs, the same things as fats. Here's the thing. 1 gram of protein has about 4 calories. The same thing applies to carbohydrates, 4 calories. And the last one here is fat. 1 gram usually has 9 calories. So when you look at this information and you say, well, I'm going to eat 100 grams of protein, 100 grams of carbs, and 100 grams of fat, if you wanted to calculate the amount of calories, theoretically speaking, of you be consuming, essentially you just need to multiply it 4 times 100, 4 times 100, 9 times 100, so that'll give you 400, 800 plus 900, that's going to be about 1700 if my math is right. That's exactly how we usually calculate this information. So when we're trying to manipulate your nutrition according to those goals, we start to play around with these numbers. Now, there are specific recommendations of each that I try to figure out what's your most optimal distribution according to you. But keep in mind though that when we're adjusting this, sometimes they're different depending on the day that you're actually going through. For example, an active day, you're gonna have more calories being burned on a daily basis because you're exercising. So your caloric expenditure, the amount of calories you're burning on that specific day, is gonna be higher than others. If not, ask yourself, for example, when you started working out, if you hadn't for a while, you probably started to feel a lot hungrier. And that's normal because that's just a way, a response of your body to tell you, hey, I'm hungry, I need to eat, I don't have enough fuel on my system. That's exactly what we do. In your program, what we do, we keep your protein around the same, but then sometimes we manipulate your carbohydrates and your fats according to that. Sometimes the carbohydrates are gonna be a little higher on days that you're working out. Some days your carbs are gonna be lower if you're resting or not exercising as much. Or maybe you're a person that is more predisposed to using fats more efficiently, so we may increase your fats on days you're working out and lower your carbohydrates. It really depends on many different factors. That's why coaching works, because we want to understand what works for you best. So the same thing applies with caloric surplus. We try to keep your protein around the same and try to make sure that you're meeting those needs, but when we manipulate your carbohydrates either up or down depending on what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish, usually, of course, your needs according to your calories are going to be a lot higher. So maybe, for example, for somebody that is trying to lose or trying to gain weight, maybe this is not going to be 100, maybe this is going to be 250, and then maybe this is going to be, again, 250 as well, and fats maybe going to be 150. So maybe that's going to equal to a lot more calories at the 2100 that we see in there, therefore putting you on a state of caloric surplus and helping you increase that on a daily basis. Now here's where the problem lies on a lot of people when they lack awareness. They don't know what they're at. To the fact that sometimes you don't really know if you are being on a caloric deficit on a daily basis because, well, one, maybe you're not tracking, and number two, sometimes you're just not sure what really is it that you're putting on your plate. So whenever you are consuming, let's say Monday through Sunday, and then one day you're consuming 1700 and the other day you're consuming 2500 and so, and it's kind of like a roller coaster. It goes up and down. What's going to happen is your net is always going to be maybe higher than this number and not ideal for what you're trying to accomplish. In other cases, you may be consuming little protein or sometimes too much fat and little carbs. We had to look at that information and we had to create something that is more consistent on a weekly basis for you to be able to see results. Now, on part number 3 of this video series, I'm going to teach you why sometimes eating too little and not consuming enough carbohydrates or not enough calories on a daily basis could be actually the reason why you're not seeing changes when you're not seeing results. See you guys in the next video.